We are two ESCP students and we decided to travel around the world to meet and interview graduates from the school.
Today we're in Hanoi and we're meeting Bruce Delteil, the managing partner of McKinsey Vietnam. He's been working for more than 27 years here in Southeast Asia, so we're quite excited to meet him today.
I've spent a lot of time in Indonesia, I spent a lot of time in Singapore, and now I'm in Vietnam. So which is why I always tend to say that my experience was really Southeast Asian. The best Asia experience you will get is if you give time. If you really want a 21-year-old to really experience 2 years where things go in every direction, everything's possible, this would be in Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and so on. Rapidly growing countries where things are happening and exciting and changing fast. Consulting is probably one of the only fields that gives the opportunity to be exposed to so many things at the same time and have a diversity of experience.
Right now we're in Ho Chi Minh City and we're going to meet Bruce for a football game.
My name is Bruce Delteil. I have been in Asia for about 27 years. I've done most of my career in consulting and I am currently the managing partner of McKinsey in Vietnam, where we have 2 offices, one in Hanoi and one in Ho Chi Minh City. C'est bon?
Ouais.
Okay.
How would you describe consulting for people who are not familiar to this field?
How I would define consulting is finding very clear areas where clients, organizations, or government believe that they either don't have the skills or the capacity or are not exposed enough to new ideas and require the help of McKinsey or any consulting firm to fill that gap and work hand in hand with them to achieve what they want to achieve. Consulting also adapts to the nature of the markets you're in. In emerging Asia, naturally, you would be responding to questions related to growth. You would be responding to questions related to diversification. There are a lot of conglomerates in Asia, which tends to go beyond their core business, if there's one. And then you would be responding to a lot of questions related to acquiring talent and new capabilities. In more mature economies like in Europe or in the US, a lot is related to efficiency. So aligning processes, improving automation, trying to gain as much as possible value on the enterprise side, cost, efficiency, productivity, and so on. And typically when an organization reaches a level of maturity, they are able to do a lot of things on their own. And then that's when they actually start tackling a little bit more what's happening on the inside.
Can you talk about the biggest problems you have to face in the consulting industry?
So first of all, consulting is with people, right? It's not only on ideas. It's a lot on ideas, but you talk to people. So the first challenge is to make sure that when you talk to Vietnamese clients, you're not talking to Indonesian clients, you're not talking to Chinese clients. Approaches, in terms of planning, in terms of implementation, in terms of exposure to risk, all this is also part of an overall culture. So that's what makes the job very exciting, because the same ideas would have to be formulated or articulated differently in different countries. Number 2, which is kind of related to number 1, is consulting requires to have an alignment, a vast alignment across leadership teams. You cannot convince organizations by just convincing the CFO or the CEO. You need to make sure that everybody's on board. And that is actually what takes time. 3 is to always be on top of what's happening, because in the world we live in, clients learn very fast too, and then they're exposed to what's happening in the world. And a bank in Vietnam would know what Standard Chartered has decided to do and the reasons why they decided to do it. Which means that if a question comes up on, but I heard that Morgan Stanley or this bank or that bank is doing this, is that applicable for me? You better know what those have been, right?
What makes a good consultant?
Someone who is intellectually curious, definitely. Even if a topic could sound a little bit more boring and so on, right? But what does that really mean? What is the impact that it could have? What can I learn from what I'm doing? Having that proactive mindset, which is I'm going to be in a consulting career to do all these things. Consulting is probably one of the only fields that gives the opportunity to be exposed to so many things at the same time and have a diversity of experience.
Right now we're in Ho Chi Minh City. Actually, we met Bruce at Hanoi headquarters of McKinsey, but at the end of the meeting he told us that maybe we could meet again in Ho Chi Minh because he's also working in South Vietnam, and we're going to meet Bruce for a football game. So how was the game?
So the game has just started. We are getting warmed up. Slowly but surely we're getting there. Potentially we'll score a goal in 20-25 minutes.
Do you often play football with your team? Or?
Yeah. Every time I'm in Saigon, I would join it. It's a great way to onboard people. You can see that the weather is very different. In Hanoi at the moment, we are towards the end of winter, and Ho Chi Minh City has kind of the same weather all year long.
So you work in both places?
Yes, half of my time is here and half of my time is in Hanoi. Right now we're playing with my colleagues, and mainly the colleagues that are in the digital hub, the coders, the data scientists, the engineers, the software developers from McKinsey.
So McKinsey is not only doing strategy consulting.
Now I think strategy, if I'm not wrong, is probably 20-25% of what we do. The rest is on transformation, implementation, and digital. And now there is digital strategy as well, so we have mixed teams with different profiles.
How many people are working for McKinsey in Vietnam?
About 180.
And regarding nationality, how is it balanced?
About 1/3 international expats, 2/3 Vietnamese. Most of our digital practitioners are actually from Vietnam. Vietnam has a very rich pool of talent in digital, brilliant profiles.
Stay away from, I'll go for 1 year and see if I like it. That typically doesn't work, right? The best Asia experience you will get is if you give time. If you come to Asia, please be aware that every country is very different. And there used to be this idea that, oh, maybe I should go to Singapore and Hong Kong first. It's more international, and then from that, when I've seen this, when I'm safe in Singapore, then I can venture in other countries. No, don't do that. Do a bit of research. It could be based actually on holidays that you spent in Phuket or Bali or somewhere else, and say, okay, actually, did I enjoy that environment that I was in? And if I read a little bit about Indonesia or Vietnam or Malaysia, is that something I feel connected with? And go for countries where things are happening and exciting and changing fast. And then the last point, if you believe that marketing is what you really want to do, and then you've got a great opportunity in management control, because it's your first experience and you're in Asia and in Malaysia or somewhere else doing it, I would say go for it as well. You'll have plenty of time to go back to other paths later. So don't constrain and put boundaries around, I only want to do HR in Singapore.
In your advice, you mentioned going to countries that grow fast now in this region. Which one would you recommend to ESCP students?
So, I mentioned countries where there are a lot of things to build. Right, things are a little bit more, less set in stone. If you really want a 21-year-old to really experience 2 years where things go in every direction, everything's possible, this would be in Southeast Asian countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and so on. A professional career, whatever that is based on people you're going to work with. So there are two things that were important for me. One is it's important to know people. So it's important to meet and go and talk to people, right? And then number two is because when you get into the second phase of your career, all the people that you met 20 years ago, they're all in places. So it's great actually to have met them 20 years ago. And sometimes when people, when you are a student, you say, I don't really think of where these people will be in 20 years. Think about it. At some point in your life and in your career, you will receive the same advice, right? So one is, don't go too fast, take your time. The other one is try and do something which is aligned with your passion. And if your passion can become your career, then yeah. And then there are a few others, that are really the usual thing that you hear. So I don't think it's the advice. I think it's the person that gives you the advice. Because it will always be, in one way or another, something related to this, right? Excitement and spend the time on what's essential and so on. It's just that those things are more important at some point in your life. When one of these things are really important in your life and someone special, a mentor, a professor, someone from family actually happens to be right there at that moment in life, then typically that's when the advice is brought to life. In McKinsey, for example, we make sure that everyone know the 3, 4, 5% that are really involved in your career, and that you could reach out at any point in time and say, I'm having doubt about this, or I'm not quite sure about that, right? So the advice is really to build that support system, no more than 4 or 5 people, and see if you can leverage it whenever you need it. Oh yeah, it's very confidential. I can't say anything about this. No, so okay.